Viridian, the Green Guide by My Head in the Clouds, Not Coming Down. A Boku no Hero fanfic. Chapter 8. Looking Ahead. Izuku kept an eye on the clock and put all of his books away 5 minutes before school ended. He saw some of the other students shooting him looks as the seconds ticked away and swallowed thickly. Hopefully he really had been getting faster since becoming a vigilante, because he wasn't looking forward to what would happen to him if he didn't manage to get away in time. The bell was like a gun at the beginning of a race, and Izuku was out of the room before most of his classmates had even grabbed their bags. From there, it was just rushing to his locker, then out the door. The only one who could have hoped to catch up to him at this point would be Kacchan, but Izuku hoped that his luck would hold, and Kacchan would just go home like he had been doing for the last few weeks. He didn't know why Kacchan seemed to be taking it easy on him, but maybe he finally realized that Izuku didn't have any hope of being better than him. Maybe if Izuku kept his head down, then Kacchan wouldn't see him as a threat, and he would keep leaving him alone. It was almost too much to hope for. Mom was at work when he got home, so he sent her a quick text saying that he was going to go watch hero fights as he got changed. Then he grabbed his slingshot and a few dozen marbles and walked out the door. He needed to get used to his new weapon, considering he'd never actually used a slingshot before, and it might just be his poor self-esteem talking, but somehow he didn't think in the middle of the fight was the best time to practice his aim, hence why he was going to do some target practice. At first he was going to go to a park, but he didn't want to risk running into any of his classmates. They tried to destroy his things on the best of days, but if they were to see him practicing with a weapon, well, Izuku didn't want to have to go back to the hardware store so soon. Besides, it was probably better to practice someplace secluded anyways, because if people saw him practicing with a slingshot and then Viridian started using a slingshot shortly after, then that might be suspicious enough to lead police to his doorstep, and he'd rather not make his mom worry. Dagobah Beach definitely wasn't as pretty as it had been a few decades ago, but it really wasn't the beach's fault. Just like it wasn't Izuku's fault that he was useless. It was just a kind of fact of life. Izuku had been introduced to it a few years ago when he had tagged along with Kacchan and his friends for the afternoon, and they walked by it. "Hey, that's where you should live, Deku. You'd feel right at home with all the other trash." He'd kind of been right. Yeah, the beach didn't smell the best, since the weird fishy smell of the ocean mixed with the rotting piles of garbage, but the ventilation was okay, so it only took a few minutes for Izuku to stop noticing the smell. But it was secluded and peaceful. There wasn't anyone here to beat him up or tell him to kill himself. It was just him and all the other useless garbage that people had thrown away. It was nice. Izuku dug through piles before he found a piece of sheet metal that wasn't too rusted and set it up against an old washing machine, then stood a few meters back and got out his slingshot. It only took him a few tries to figure out how to pinch the marble through the pouch so that he didn't drop it. But soon enough he lined up his shot and aimed for the dead center of his makeshift target. Izuku took a deep breath and let go. Now if he was right, the marble should make a sound when it hit the target, and well, either his target didn't actually make a sound, or he'd missed. Of those two possibilities, Izuku had to admit that the latter was much more likely. He looked in the sand under the target, but he couldn't see the marble, so his aim was obviously a bit off. He searched for a full 2 or 3 meters before giving up and searching for a tarp to put behind his target instead. He didn't want the trash pile to eat all of his marbles before he even had a chance to practice. Eventually, Izuku found a tarp that didn't have too many holes in it, draped it between his target and the washing machine, then put down another tarp in the sand underneath it. Now, as long as he managed to shoot in the general area of his target, he shouldn't lose his marbles. Not that he hadn't obviously lost his marbles a long time ago, considering he had chosen to be a vigilante. So, dumb joke. He really should stop trying to be funny. He still didn't hit the target on his next shot, but the tarp worked well and caught the marble so he could reuse it. His arms were starting to get sore by the time he finally heard a telltale metallic ding as he hit his target for the first time, and Izuku couldn't help himself as he whooped in excitement and started jumping around, startling a few seagulls that had been trying to find something to eat among the garbage. He flushed with embarrassment before he realized that no one would be annoyed with him for yelling because no one was around. And then he smiled. He'd done it. He'd actually hit his target. By the time the sun was setting, Izuku was able to reliably hit his target, and the sheet metal was covered in small dents. He was down a few marbles for when his shots gone wildly off course. But overall, Izuku thought that the afternoon had been a success. He felt all warm and happy, and if he didn't know any better, he'd almost say he was proud. If this was how Kacchan felt every time someone told him how awesome he was, then Izuku could see the appeal. Kacchan didn't know how he was supposed to feel. He really shouldn't be pitying Doku, and he definitely shouldn't be feeling guilty for how he treated him. The quirkless fucker deserved it for being so weak, right? So why, then, did Kacchan feel like he was going to throw up every time one of those extras at school told him to jump off a roof? He'd told Doku to jump off a roof. It shouldn't be any different if someone else was saying it. But was Doku really as weak as all of that? When all those heroes had been sitting on their asses, Doku had been the only one to run forward to try and save him. Did that mean Deku was strong? Or did that mean that Katsuki was weak? Was he even weaker than Doku if he had to rely on a quirkless weakling like that to save him? No, he had to be strong. He had a quirk that let him make fucking explosions. He was going to be the #1 hero, and there was no way Deku or any of those other useless extras were going to stand in his way. He was going to be even better than All Might. But would All Might treat Deku like he had? But all his other teachers knew that he was going to be a hero, and they would have told him if he wasn't acting like a hero, right? They were always going on about how Katsuki had what it took, and heroes were better than everyone else. So, he was better than Doku, right? So why did he feel so bad? At first he just thought that the sludge must have just been making him nauseous or something, because there was no logical reason for him to feel this way. He was strong. He obviously wasn't doing anything wrong. But what if he was? Katsuki threw off the covers and went to his computer. He obviously wasn't going to get any sleep anytime soon, so he might as well do something productive. He found himself looking up how to be a hero. There were the obvious articles that he had read a million times before about how to apply to hero schools, what it took to get a license and all that crap, but that wasn't what Katsuki was really looking for. He frowned before typing something else into the search bar. How was a hero supposed to act? He clicked on a video of All Might and rushed to put the headphones in so that he wouldn't wake up his dad. The hag slept like a rock, so he wasn't worried about her. The interview was a few years old, and All Might grinned as he sat across from the host, the couch sagging under the weight of his massive muscles. The host looked like a baby in comparison, but it was always possible that they were smaller than normal because of their quirk. So, All Might, I know that a lot of kids dream of becoming a hero like you, the host began. As well they should, All Might laughed. It is a difficult career, and it's definitely not for everyone. But if you have what it takes, it is extremely rewarding. Exactly, and we all know how physically grueling heroism is. But what about emotionally? All Might, what do you think it takes to be a hero at heart, even for those who never get a license? That's a good question. All Might paused for a moment as he was thinking. I think a hero is someone who gives others hope. They lift up others at every opportunity and encourage them to be better. The people we heroes defend will almost always be weaker than us. If this wasn't the case, then everyone would defend themselves and heroes wouldn't be an essential career they are today. But it is our responsibility to make sure that they find their inner strength and become the best people they can be. What about heroes like Endeavor, who have been known to look down on their fans? I can't speak for every hero, of course, but personally, I wouldn't have gotten to the #1 spot if I spent my time and energy insulting my fans. Katsuki froze as All Might turned to look at the camera, and it felt like he was staring right into his soul. A hero isn't someone who insults others. A hero is kind and comforts people in the midst of disasters. My mentor once taught me that if a person is in need of saving, that means that they're going through the worst day of their lives. If you insult them rather than saving them with a smile, are you truly saving them? Or are you making the worst day of their lives even worse? That is why I believe a hero should always strive to be kind, make others happy, and give them hope. That's what it truly means to be a hero. The interviewer laughed and moved on to the next question. as the studio audience applauded the nation's hero of peace. And Katsuki was left to stare at his reflection in the screen as it went dark as the next video in the playlist loaded. Crap.